Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. Welcome to the Good Old Football Podcast. I am your host, Matt Edwards. Appreciate you making me a part of your week. I know it's busy out there for everyone. Always is. And, one important key to as you grow up and you get more and more things to do, start a podcast. That will certainly help you become less busy, 48 hours before Christmas night. It's a good idea to be a grown man recording a podcast in your father's living room on Christmas Eve. I feel like a real winner here today, guys, but I do appreciate you tuning in. Hope you were able to navigate those Christmas parties all right. I know that on Sunday, my mom's side of the family made the Christmas party at 2 p.m. this year. Typically at 4 p.m., I would show up a little late after the 1 o'clock games, say that I had to stop and help an old lady cross the street. It all worked out. This year, had to listen to part of a game on a radio. Really, listening to the Bengals on the radio, it's kind of, you're not missing much. You don't want to visually, digest that team if you don't have to. But anyways, I did do something after my Christmas party on Sunday that I don't typically do. I went to a bar, restaurant situation, and it was mostly Browns fans there. I'm in Ohio for Christmas. And on multiple occasions, not a ton, but I think at least 3 different times during the hour and a half I was there, I heard folks say I would hear them say Cleveland Browns, and I would hear them say it in the same breath as the name Urban Meyer. At some point in all of our lives, we've got to be adults, we've got to face facts, and for some of us, I think for about 31 different franchises out there, we've got to realize when a certain coach is out of our league. We've got to realize when it's the hottest girl in the bar and our gut is hanging out of our shirt in public as we drink our Pabst Blue Ribbon. You think the most accomplished football coach in Ohio this century is going to take the reins of that? Take the pilot seat of a plane that crashes every time it seems to get off the ground and going. Urban Meyer is not going to go coach the Cleveland Browns. If he goes anywhere in the NFL, it's going to be Dallas. I think we all kind of know that. But I guess if you want to do the whole wishful thinking thing, that's okay. I get that. But at the same time, be honest with yourself. That's the first name that comes up? You think you're going to go from Freddie Kitchens to Urban Meyer? From Hugh Jackson to Freddie Kitchens to Urban Meyer? Think about that in a dating analogy. You don't go from this person to an absolute supermodel. That's not how it works. Try not to put anyone down with that analogy. You guys get it. As for who the Browns coach in 2020 will be, it's anyone's guess. I'll say this, if you're a fan of the Ravens, Steelers, or the Bengals, it's a win-win because you either get Freddie Kitchens again, who, come on. We've seen what this guy's up to. He had a quote, I'm not sure if you saw it. I saw it, I believe, in The Ringer, where he said he's not in the business of drawing up fancy plays, he's in the business of football. He might not have even said it that well. He might have just said he's not in the business of drawing up plays. So either if you're a fan of one of the other 3 teams in the AFC North, you either get that guy again, the guy who's supposedly an offensive mind who not that interested in drawing up plays in the NFL, or you get a new guy. Maybe it's Ron Rivera, maybe it's Jason Garrett, but once again, you're starting over and you're proving why you're the Browns. Baker Mayfield would be working with his 4th NFL head coach in 3 seasons, and that's why they say dysfunctional organizations and dysfunctional companies do dysfunctional things. So, if they fire Freddie Kitchens, and I don't know if they will, you have to think if they lose to the Bengals, which is totally a possibility, you have to think if they lose to the Bengals this Sunday, Freddie Kitchens at least gets a stern talking to. But do you really want to go into 2020 knowing that your coach is on the hot seat? It's a tough situation, but the Browns put themselves in it by hiring a guy who, maybe not exactly credentialed for that job. Definitely not credentialed for that job. I asked this question yesterday while I was at the barn in Zanesville, Ohio. I asked my friend who's a Browns fan and doesn't listen to this podcast because he is just a bad person in general. But I asked him, I said, you get to keep one guy. Do you keep Freddie Kitchens or do you keep Odell Beckham Jr.? because Browns fans aren't too happy with either, and they are the common denominator in this whole thing, right? If you look at the new pieces, and by the way, the Browns going to end up in about the same boat they did last year, but obviously last year, coming off the awful season, the historically awful 2-year stretch they had, it was a bit of a different story. But if you got to let one of those guys go, who is it? You look at OBJ, he is 46 yards shy of 1,000 yards on the season. There are 77 NFL players heading into Week 17 with more receiving touchdowns than Odell Beckham Jr. 77! I'll list just a few of them. Let's see here. Mike Gesicki, Dolphins tight end. Traquan Smith, Kendrick Bourne, Foster Moreau. Have you heard of these guys? Have you heard of the guys who have more receiving touchdowns? And that's just a few. That's like the real deep cuts of names. I know a lot of people in Big Ten country listen, so Mike Gesicki might stick out. Saints utility man / third-string quarterback Taysom Hill has caught 2 more touchdown passes than OBJ this year. The Baltimore Ravens, they've got 4 guys with more receiving touchdowns than Odell Beckham Jr. right now, including Mark Ingram, who is not exactly known as a pass-catching back, but he has more than OBJ's 3 receiving touchdowns this year. I'm not saying everything's OBJ's fault. I know it's not. But last year, the Browns kind of had to let it happen organically. They had to figure it out just naturally. And this year, there's too many things they're trying to force. And it's just, there's a lot of problems, but that's certainly one of them. I've said it before. If you look at the teams that win Super Bowls, very rarely do they have that A-list top 8 receiver. It's not a very common thing. And if they do, you can usually look at a quarterback who has turned them into that A-list receiver. You look at someone like Demaryius Thomas, who was a top 5 guy in the league for a while, but then Peyton Manning goes away, and suddenly things aren't quite as great anymore. Anyways, I don't want to rip on the Browns too much, but Urban's not happening. There are some things that could happen and should happen. Maybe it's Mike McCarthy, maybe it's Ron Rivera. I think Marvin Lewis takes this year's Browns to the playoffs, loses in the first round, but gets them there nonetheless. Freddie Kitchens, if you ride with him for another year, is that the guy you want to put the franchise on in this moment when you've got as much talent as you can get? We'll see. Speaking of talent, the Bengals have won. Well, the Bengals, they're not something to speak about talent to. However, they have won the rights to Joe Burrow, or whatever they should want to do with that number 1 pick. I went over this stuff last week, so if you're interested, you can go back and listen to that episode titled Joey F. Burrow. I'm not sure what his middle name is, but you can go back and listen. All in all, the situation that Joe Burrow might go into in Cincinnati has a chance to be pretty good. If they fix that offensive line, in other words, spend money on that offensive line, if they do that, which, as we all know, is a big if in Cincinnati, but if they do, Joe Burrow goes into an offense that has Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, probably / hopefully A.J. Green. If A.J. Green is healthy, that's a nice package to go into as a 23-year-old quarterback starting out in the NFL. Now, on the other end of that, you've got Cam Hayward twice a year. You've got that Ravens defense twice a year. You've probably got Myles Garrett and company twice a year, who he may swing a helmet at your head, but he's not going to have to if you have the current offensive line, because he's just going to be able to kill you the natural football way based on what we've seen out of the Bengals. I will say they've been better recently, but it's not a long-term thing for them. That thing in Miami, man, I mean, I was at my Christmas party. The Browns are on the TV locally in Ohio. The Bengals I'm watching on my phone. And boy, did we want 15 extra minutes of Bengals-Dolphins this year. That's worse than coal on Christmas, watching those 2 football teams go for an extra 15. It was actually a really good game. And once it got to overtime, I was like, because you guys know I'm very anti-tanking, but once it got to overtime, I was like, you know what? A tie for this team, and they still clinch that top pick? That works. That's not that bad of a thing. But the Bengals now have the rights to Joe Burrow. We'll see what they do with that. Wisely, they're refusing comment on the offseason right now. I know what it's like to be a Browns fan now. Browns always won the offseason. We're always excited about that. It's kind of interesting now to be like, here we are before Christmas, and I'm already excited for what's to come in the offseason. Speaking of Christmas, I've decided to do something a little fun here on the podcast this week. I don't know if it's fun, but I thought it'd be something a little different. Let's name some Christmas characters and their NFL equivalents in their traditional Christmas roles. Let's see if we have this music. There we go. Okay, so let's start out with our Christmas characters here. Let's start with Rudolph. You guys know Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, the unexpected hero dashing through the fog to help Santa deliver gifts to all the boys and girls. This is a quarterback who plays in a foggy region. This, of course, is Russell Wilson. Yeah, Seattle lost to Arizona, but they did it after losing their top two running backs in the first half of the season. Those two guys are out for the year, the first half of the game, I should say. They're out for the year now. They did it without their left tackle. They did it during a week where Josh Gordon was suspended, and this is a team that needed weapons. Remember Doug Baldwin retiring in the offseason? Russell Wilson still has a chance to win a division title and host a playoff game. Russell and Rudolph, pretty similar names. If you want a guy to guide your sleigh through the thick fog during an important time of year, I don't know about you, but I am going with Russell Wilson. That's my guy. I really hope this music isn't too loud for you to hear me. We'll keep working on it. By the way, the Seahawks bringing in Marshawn Lynch as well, taking his physical there. We'll see if he ends up in Seattle. Beast mode coming back. He's 33 years old. He'll still dominate. Can't wait to see what Marshawn's got in the take. Maybe he won't, but he's a guy who can come in for a little bit and add that pep. If nothing else, he's just going to make everyone in that locker room feel like they've got to step up their game because there is a legend among them at the moment. Moving on, Ebenezer Scrooge. Ebenezer Scrooge, a lot of people may not realize this, but when Ebenezer Scrooge died in 1874, his soul actually haunted the earth and most of the northeast region of America for many years. When he came back, he said, you know what, I want a more positive lifestyle. So he got involved in athletics. Long story short, he wound up becoming the head coach of the New England Patriots. Ebenezer Scrooge now in New England. By the way, is Spygate 2 just going away? Can Roger Goodell not be bothered to make an announcement on this, which is nearly 2 weeks old at this point? Yeah, it is 2 weeks old at this point. Too busy rewriting every rule ever written in the NFL? Is that what's going on? He's now going to alter the coin flip because for the first time since Jerome bet us on Thanksgiving 20 years ago, there was a slight issue. So he's got to fix it now. Got a big problem with all this. Goodell and Belichick, not necessarily friends. Both are not friends of the podcast, I can tell you that much. They probably do listen. Okay, The Grinch, you guys know this movie. The Jim Carrey version is the best. He is the guy who steals joy from little boys and girls. Daniel Snyder is the Grinch of the NFL, failed owner of the Washington Redskins. Look, Dwayne Haskins and Terry McLaurin have had phenomenal rookie seasons. Haskins is now over as they let him heal up that ankle injury. He would probably play, I'm sure, if they were in any sort of contention, but smart thing there, a rare smart thing for the Redskins to do. But I still can't trust this organization to put the right person in place to take those Ohio State Buckeyes to the next level. You combine that with the fact that Washington likely ends up with the number 2 overall pick, which means Chase Young, Ohio State defensive end, is likely theirs. And as an Ohio State fan, you start to get a little irritated with all these superstars going to the NFL's cousin Eddie of a franchise. The Grinch is Daniel Snyder, stealing all those Buckeyes, getting out of them something decent so far, but you just know he's going to ruin it. And that's how he stole, I don't know. Enjoy this Christmas music for one moment. All right, had to wet the old whistle. That's a good thing about music. It kind of fills the gap. How about the Kevin McAllister of the NFL? You guys know Kevin from Home Alone. People forgot about him, and all of a sudden he is beating grown men half to death. This is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, remember them? Since Patrick Mahomes, that whistle wedding really helped, didn't it? Since Patrick Mahomes returned from injury, they had, right out of the gate, that narrow loss at Tennessee, who we know is a good team. Since then, they have reeled off 5 straight victories, including a win at New England. And then the past 2 weeks, they have not allowed a touchdown on defense. Early on, looked like defense was going to be what caused them trouble. Suddenly, they're not so bad. They're figuring it out. 5 straight wins. 3 of those 5, absolute blowouts. Everyone has fallen in love with Lamar Jackson, and rightfully so. But they forgot about Mahomes and company. That's Kevin McAllister. You might want to pay attention. Kevin nearly killed Harry and Marv. If you watch Home Alone 2, which I have 3 times this month, Kevin should be charged with attempted murder in that movie. Marv is the toughest dude in the history of dudes, by the way. He sustains a career's worth of concussions in that movie and is good to go. He can't spell sticky bandits to the police at the end, but he still gives them valuable and comprehensive information. Marv may be the toughest dude to ever step foot in New York. And finally, Ralphie from A Christmas Story. You guys know Ralphie. Nothing goes his way. You want to feel bad for him, but at the same time, he's kind of whiny, and he doesn't exactly make things easy on himself, right? He just can't stop tripping over his own feet. This would be the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys are Ralphie from A Christmas Story. Remember when Ralphie beat up that redheaded kid in A Christmas Story? That Andy Dalton-looking fellow. Scott Farkas is his name in the movie. Very good villain name, too. Scott Farkas. Well, last week, the Cowboys beat up on the NFC defending champion Los Angeles Rams. Then they go to Philadelphia, and they stick their tongue right on that frozen flagpole, and you lose all faith. You wonder what's going on. Do you blame the shoulder? I don't know. But the Cowboys just not figuring it out time and time again. They've got the pieces there. They just cannot get out of their own way. Once again, the Dallas Cowboys are Ralphie from A Christmas Story. Wasn't that fun? Who says I'm not festive? I'm in the holiday spirit. I really want to find someone for Buddy the Elf, but there's not like a lovable loser, All the losers in the NFL aren't that lovable. It was the Browns before the Baker Mayfield regime got there, but there's just really not a Buddy the Elf of the NFL right now. If you have one, if you can think of one, send it to me. I'm at Matt Edwards on Twitter. I like to have fun over there, doing some things from time to time. I'm sitting here. It's Monday night. I'm recording this, trying to get it out of the way before Christmas. I am watching this Vikings-Green Bay Monday night game. For a little frame of reference, it's 10-9 Vikings in the third quarter, as I just do play-by-play from a game that's far over by the time this podcast is out. We are a little bit shorter this week. I've had guests on the last 2 weeks. The numbers have been fun. People seem to have enjoyed those episodes, and it's been fun. It's always fun to have someone else on and kind of kick it around with them. Going to be a short one this week. Like I said, we are at, 18 minutes here. And if you can't tell, I really am running out of stuff to say already. I will say this, and I didn't plan on talking about this, but the more I watch Aaron Rodgers, the more I feel like he is kind of the poor man's version of Peyton Manning. As to where Peyton Manning, to me, bar none, is, as far as regular season goes, no one was better. You knew in every regular season game he was going to come out and dominate. But, again, at the end of the day, for as good as he was and as good as his teams were, it felt like he should have had more titles. And that's why, in my lifetime, the Packers have always been good because they've had Favre, and they went straight from Favre to Rodgers. And now, as I said at the beginning of the year, I think we're going to kind of see what the Colts are, because the Colts, when I was 9 years old, got Peyton Manning, and I don't know if I was 9. I was right around there in that ballpark, and they were pretty much good from the time I could comprehend football. And then they had luck, and this time they're kind of falling off the wagon now. The Packers and Colts going to be two franchises I think are really kind of interesting to watch. And if you're a fan of the other teams in that division, you're ready for it to be over. But Rodgers is just, in those big moments, and I mean, he's not always had the best team around him. Maybe this year is one of his better ones. I know he's got the ring, but I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. You guys get what I'm saying there. It's kind of like Rodgers gets credit sometimes for maybe doing a little more than he has because he hasn't been as good as Peyton Manning in the regular season. He's got a lot of wow moments. For whatever reason, Devontae Adams doesn't get the credit of being a top-flight receiver because he plays with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe that's something that Peyton ruined for guys because Peyton would get an undrafted free agent receiver out of Central Montana Western Technical College and make him into an 80-catch, 1,000-yard guy, and then the Jaguars or some idiotic team would then sign him to a big deal, making him a guy. Remember Julius Thomas, who he had in Denver, was a Pro Bowl receiver, looked like an all-world guy with Peyton Manning. Jaguars signed him to a big deal in the offseason. Out of the league in like 3 years. I don't think Rodgers does that as well as Manning. I don't think Rodgers is as good as Manning. I don't really think anyone outside of Green Bay would believe that as the Packers take the lead here on a little touchdown action. I can't see who that is. Don't have my contacts in. What are you going to do about it? The Vikings, on the other hand, with Mike Zimmer, that's a guy I look at. Should have been the Bengals coach. Can he finally get over the hump? His problem, the Vikings don't get put in that category enough as far as tortured franchises go. I mean, back in the day, they made, I think, 4 Super Bowls in an 8-year run and didn't win any of them. That 1998 NFC Championship game, of course, just brutal. To have that go down the way that it did on one of the all-time teams, 15-1 in the regular season. So we'll see if Zimmer can finally get him there. Kirk Cousins, spotlight's on you, brother. See what you can do. All right, rambling at this point. Sorry it's so short this week. Or not. Maybe you like it to be a little shorter. Who knows? We'll do what we do as the Packers go for 2. And appreciate everyone tuning in. Rodgers takes a snap, fires, and it's caught in the end zone. Is that Geronimo? 17-10. All right, cool. We'll see what happens in this one. Going to be fun. I'm going to watch the fourth quarter. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, at Matt Edwards on Twitter, at Good Old Matthew on Instagram, where I just kind of post. I don't even know what I'm doing with that account. I just wanted to have fun with something. But I'm kind of over social media, man. I don't mean to sound like a hippie, but I'm not that interested in anything that's on there. Anything that does pique my interest is more negative. I don't know. Maybe I have to view it as a tool, as they would say at a TED Talk. All right, everyone have a great Christmas. Happy New Year, although I'll talk to you again before that. Appreciate you tuning in so much. Hope Santa's nice to you. Auto Magic taking us home. Be sure to check them out wherever you get your music. You've been listening to the Good Old Football Podcast. Merry Christmas!